half the battle, because there's all sorts of tweaks and things that you can do. And if I made a USB image, then I would basically give the best image of RaidX to people. So, so with that, I can still have people try out RaidX, but I can also make a subset of it available as a open source, so that further development can happen too. Yes.
So talk a little bit about sort of your today's timeline. Timelines always change, but for your tests and betas, and then ideally when you'd have a product ready for someone to open their wallet for. What's that timeline to accomplish this?
Okay. So until September, I have to get back into school mode since school starts, and in September actually I'm going to London to give a presentation on RaidX to a one of the most prestigious conferences in terms of storage, and so there I plan to meet with a lot of other researchers and professionals to talk about storage and RAID. So basically for the next couple of weeks I'll be doing that. But in that time I also will be, so next week I will also be planning with Robert Anderson, the UNH's IT director, who invited me to talk and give them a pitch on RaidX to use on UNH's storage networks. So while I'm at the conference, I hope that they will be testing RAID and giving me feedback on that. So then, and depending on what kinds of feedback they give, that will determine the pivot that I will take in terms of RaidX.
So in a perfect world, when would you start, assuming that the beta tests, you get good feedback, you make some modifications, like, is that horizon 6 months, is that 12 months, is it 5 years? What do you see that horizon being in a perfect world?
Okay, in a perfect world, me being the naive engineer, I see 6 months. At home, I've also been, I still have my server, and I've also been assembling another server for RaidX that I basically am going to put all my personal files onto RaidX so that I can actually have my hand in the fire if all things go south. But I think that also will give a great pitch to people who are willing to open up their wallets and try it out. So yes, in fact, I plan to set up this server before I go on the conference. So it'll be up and running. That's why I say 6 months. But knowing the business side of things, you usually have to double the engineer's guess, at least, to make a real product out of it.
How are you planning on sharing your idea? Once you finish these beta tests and you want other people to start testing it too on their own platforms, how are you planning on sharing it with the public? So you going to set up a website, or how are you going to share it?
So, not sure what you mean by the public, because if you think about it, you probably wouldn't want this at home. You wouldn't have the patience to put this together on your own at home. But the thing that would be helpful for the public is the consumer product idea I had of RaidX. But in order to do that, so the profit margins on a consumer product would be very, very little. So they'd have to be offset by the enterprise version. So going to like these trade shows and conferences is how to get word out on RaidX. And also, there's this company, Gartner, that does technology and all these other things that they basically look at and test and figure out the how good it is. And they give reports on these kinds of emerging technologies. And so I have meetings that I'm going to do with them, which will then open up another avenue for getting more customers. Yes?
Can we take a step back to the USB idea? So I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it probably takes weeks to set up a server, right? Like if a person were to manually do it. So this would be removing like a huge chunk of time that they would have to spend.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can also think of it as a death drive.
Yep.
Because if you plug it into the computer, it will take over and erase whatever is on there. So I will have to make all sorts of warnings and like skull and crossbones on it, saying that you have to be careful with this thing. Because that's so. But to be fair, the competitors do the same thing. So when, like I was mentioning, there was this home server that I was setting up, and so naively I put a couple of my drives in it, expecting that they would just magically come up. Well, the first thing that Box did is wipe the drive and set it up for itself, even without me even asking to do anything. So this is something that people would be used to, that if they're putting a RAID hardware together, the stuff that's on the hard drive is as good as gone. Yes.
So you mentioned that if you install your RaidX on a regular server, it'll speed it up and it's like cross-compatible. Could you talk a little bit more about how much it would speed it up and like how many of these RaidX boxes you'll need to like effectively speed up a huge server?
Yep. So there's lots of ways of that I found RaidX to speed up. One of the more interesting ways, which I still as an engineer am perplexed as to why this is, but one of the interesting things is that if you separate the storage from the compute node, like that picture I had, you can actually achieve, I think it was 4 to 10 times the speed up on your storage, which I found as ridiculous, right? Because so the technical side is the computers to the local disk access is very, very fast. And Ethernet is not that fast. But even still, having the two machines separate has shown performance enhancements. So now this is just separating the two machines out. Now if you add, say you have a whole bunch of magnetic drives and you add a solid state disk to it, lots of people have tried this where they use the solid state disk as a sort of cache device.
Yep.
But that basically makes the data duplicate. So the data is still on the RAID, but it's also on the SSD so that it's faster for access. Well, with RaidX, you're not duplicating the data anymore. You're migrating it from one to the other so that all the data that you use more often is on the cache device, so therefore you're getting the speed ups that way, if that makes sense.
What's the life cycle then of a RaidX compared to a traditional server or like
So,
hard drive?
it's tough to put it in numbers, but if you think about it this way, when you set up a traditional RAID array and you have a disk or two fail,
Yeah.
then you're gonna throw all that out and buy a new one with bigger disks and faster RAID. With RaidX, if drives fail, you just replace the drives with bigger drives, but you still get to keep the hardware and everything, and still make use of the old disks, which are still perfectly good. So in my eyes, it's more environmentally friendly because you're no longer throwing away perfectly good hard drives just because there were some other ones that failed.
Huh.
So the life cycle of RaidX is actually a lot longer if you look at it this way. Any other questions? My presentation was clear as day.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.